Welcome back everyone, DestinysJesus here. In this video, I'm going to be breaking down how I was able to qualify for the FNCS Opens of All Stars. I placed around the 1,000 mark, and actually these games are pretty tough. I had some really important things that I need to learn and take away from this tournament, and the big thing is the fact that I've not played a single solo custom, and I also changed around my scent loads just before this event. I changed like 3 times in a single day, which really messed up my aim for this tournament. So I only had 7 kills overall, but apart from that, all my rotates and positioning were really well. Basically had a bunch of really consistent games throughout, and then a bunch of things that you guys can learn from as well. As always, I hope you guys enjoy this video. Make sure to leave a like if you do. Okay, so as always, it's most important in your first game of the tournament to make it worth the most. If you throw your first game when you've got good looks, you're trying to W key, in my opinion, it's not really worth it. As you can see here, I've got insane loot, 2 pads, loads of extra heals as well to do good in the end game, and I position myself really well after getting 1 kill off spawn, where I've got a pretty simple rotate here. Again, I'm not trying to throw this game away, W king these somewhat bad players when I can just instead play a really simple end game and get a very nice low kill win, which will allow me to still play on kind of lowest elo and have good games afterwards. Only unique thing in that rotate, which is pretty simple, is just the fact I'm saving my pad. I don't really know I could recycle off of, and instead I just mark where I want to end up, go at kind of a late timing, and also a big thing is going when other people are using their pads, right? You're gonna let those other people pad for you on 50-50 zone so you don't get focused if you're making a foot rotate. Okay, so again, first game, really important to make sure you're having a good consistent end game, so I don't take any risks with going for a refresh. I probably could get a kill here, but instead of greeding for one of these kills on backside or trying to greed to recycle someone else's pad, just do a very simple hide pad and make sure I land in a good spot where I'm not gonna die. Okay, so as I'm in the end of first zone, still trying to look for a refresh, again doing it from a very safe distance as you can see here, just doing a simple replace. I don't want to jump in this guy's box, especially my aim's all wobbly in this tournament, but instead I just do a nice simple play from this distance. Don't crack him with that same tag, so I don't chase it, which is the most important thing, and then I'm going to go ahead and use my second pad on moving. In my opinion, this is kind of a misplay by me. I probably should have just done a low pad here, gone around the dead side of zone, which is this left hand side towards the west. That will allow me to basically have nobody on that side. I can land at front side and make a play possibly for height later on with good mats. Instead, I get beamed by the guy on height. Good thing is whenever you're actually getting beamed by someone on height, is just go towards them. This means that you've got out of their line of sight, as you can see. Guys don't get any more bullets from me, able to land very safely and heal up fully. Since this is a fairly dead lobby, and I actually know that high ground's been on it for the majority of the game, which in my opinion is a misplay, what I go ahead and do here is just pop my quick kills and then instantly rotate to the front side of Storm. As you can see, high ground is not pressuring me at all while I do this rotate. If they did pressure me, I would just swap to metal very simply. That would allow them to just continuously spray me, but instead I'm able to just run along very freely in wood, save all my hard mats for later on, make sure I connect here just by doing this double down strat, just like so. Backward jump, cover my head, look that there's somebody in the air that high ground is shooting at, as you can see there, and I instantly start looking at high ground. They've made the misplay. I'm actually in the end of zone, as you can see. They're the whole way on backside, so I can very simply shoot them out, try to beam them as they fall, and then as soon as they go down, I just instantly go up at the front side, and that's pretty much the simplest hide take you can do. Whenever you're good mats, whenever you use mobility, and you're good HP as well, just go to the front side of Storm. If high ground's not pressuring you, they're probably on the backside doing something, and you can just shoot them up just like that, and they get high ground for free. And again here, big thing with these first games, I could greed for the skill. This guy's 1 HP, he's just running around low ground with a pepper on. Instead, I decided to go very conservative and sit on high ground and get the win. Get that refresh on that other player trying to come up, and then at this point it's very simple. All I have to do is just not over peak on this other guy. He's taking the wall! And he's dead! What am I doing? So after you've had that good first game, all you need to do is just play consistent, and this is what I did this game. Didn't have any movement, however I did have peppers, so I'm able to just use those later on. So right here is a really good thing that you guys can take away from this video. So whenever you're actually going to recycle a pad, this guy actually padded early, which is a pretty good play to do, is make sure you do this as you jump down on the pad. Right here, this is what I'm talking about. There's a player right there that can easily hit 100 pump on me. That increases the chance of him just going ahead and just jumping in my box. If he wants to chase me, he needs a refresh, just simply land and just jump into my box and I'll be dead because of the server lag. Or alternatively, if he pumps me 100 and another player shoots me at the same time, I'm just dead out of the sky in that situation, and I've wasted 25 minutes for a 1-point game, which is absolutely pathetic. So make sure you do this. Just as you're dropping down, place these walls. I've seen this hundreds and hundreds of times by top tier pros. They just don't build walls, they drop, completely covers all of your angles, and also delays those other players' rotates, so they don't actually go ahead and follow you mid-air. I do make a mistake here where I actually fly too much in the open. I should have stuck closer to the trees. I get cracked, but I'm perfectly fine. One thing that I do whenever I'm landing is to make sure I try to land towards the center of 50-50 zone. This will allow us something really useful later on, which I'll talk about in a second. So this right here is why I actually think it's better to land in the center of zone. Obviously, if you land on the edge, you have a somewhat chance of actually getting zone straight back, and you can have really good games as well from there. However, if you land in the center, no matter where zone goes, it's not going to be that bad. Obviously, it's going to be somewhat difficult to rotate, but it allows you a way higher chance of recycling a pad, just like this. All I go ahead and do is, instead of worrying about having to rotate the max distance, I instead can scout 360 degrees around me, figure out exactly where a pad is. I can look towards the back side of the zone or the front side to find a pad, as you can see here. Pad's been placed on the back side, pop my pepper, go ahead and run over there, and actually go ahead and tank some storm just to get this pad off. Tanking storm, especially in whites like this, is perfectly fine. If you have a chug cannon as well, it works excellently. And you can see here, I tank these storm ticks and actually go ahead and tank even more storm ticks on the front side just to get in zone. And you can see how many mats I saved just by doing that center zone play. Hit the bunny hop, go and storm tank some extra ticks, and it's actually called the Nikov strat. Nikov used to do this back during World Cup solo quads when he got really close to qualifying, I believe. He'd go ahead and just tank storm with medkits, hit a really nice pad where he could actually rotate during the end game, and then they just save so many mats and always have consistent end games. Right here, obviously I could go ahead and tarp in, however I think it's better in my opinion just to go ahead and sit in your box for a long period of time, scout, figure out how you want to rotate. I know that kid's in zone ahead of me just based on the way he's playing, and also the fact I've got a mark cut up exactly telling me how far I've got to go. So all I go ahead and do is just figure out, okay, good to go now. Just go underneath him, figure out exactly where he was, and then go directly below him, just like so. So later on in this game, I actually made a really big mistake here that I actually mentioned earlier on, which is the correct play. The one issue of this height take that I did wrong here compared to that previous game where it worked is the fact I'm not in the end of zone, as you can see. If I waited a little bit extra time and actually tarped into more of a front side position, or more of actually in the end of zone completely, then did this exact play, I looked at the height, chopped them out perfectly, and they basically just conceded height to me after that little bit of a beam. But the thing is with this is another player is doing the exact same thing, the correct height take where they're on the front side, and I have to give it up instantly. I really can't hold this. I just go a little bit forward and then just go ahead and decide to drop. At this point, all I can really do is just play for the extra placement and try to get this medkit off. Just timing a medkit like this endgame is actually really important. Allows me a load of extra placement and actually gets me into a way better placement threshold as well. Head up, which is probably a misplay, and then jump down here and get shot on. So right here, this is a really important thing that you guys need to be doing, which is just scouting and running through getting as much information on these other players that are around you. Obviously in this situation, I could pad or I could pepper this zone, and a lot of players make the mistake of just thinking about using their own pad and not getting too greedy. However, being greedy in solos sometimes can pay off, as you can see here. Could easily pad myself, however, I just want to go ahead and recycle someone else's so I can double pad this max distance zone. So what I'm going to do is just scout this kid below me. He's making it really obvious he's going to pad. He's placed loads of floors extra ahead. I can even scout out other players like this guy over here who's going to pad as well. But instead just recycle the closest guy near me. Go ahead and fly around so this guy on high ground can't beam me again. Trying to be mindful of where the high ground player is and who's potentially able to beam you as well. So right here is what you want to go ahead and do if you need to refresh on these later zones. As you can see, my mats are somewhat still decent. I don't want to risk my game just yet. So what I go ahead and do is rotate towards the front side early enough where I'm ahead of all these other players. And now I'm kind of acting as a choke point where I've got two boxes of edit controls. I've got all of these walls in here that I've got edits on in this box, plus the box behind me where I can look all around myself on my layer, above my layer, and below my layer, as you can see, for a refresh. Catch this other player running through here. If I was on level 1 HP, I would have jumped on him for the kill. But again, I don't want to throw my game going for these players that are still on decent HP, and I'm quite only 100 HP here with no shield, so I could easily die. Again, another small tag, I don't want to throw my game, so instead I just go ahead and rotate, letting the storm overtake me for a second, then hit a very nice cheap wood top. Trying to use my wood now to save my metal for later on when I'm fully boxed, as you can see. Again here, letting the other players go ahead of me and build tops for me. So again, I can just very simply jump down, follow these old builds, and then again, get into the end of zone and box up fully in the 2x1, so I've got a lot more edit control. This is actually a mistake that I made where I'm actually looking up above for a higher layer to try to get a refresh. I think I've got a harpoon for some reason, don't know what season I'm in. And right here I should be looking on my layer for a refresh. That guy right there just died and I'm not even looking on my layer, and I kind of look like a little bit of flopper here in a second as this other player comes back and gets a lot of damage on me. So you can see they get loads of damage on me. I've got 0 healing, so I just tried to go for that extra placement by living my life as long as possible, go ahead and hide, not going for any risky plays, and instead just very happy with a consistent endgame placement. Just by staying alive on 25 HP for this entire period of time, I'm just lurking around on zone, I'm actually able to convert this game into a top 10 and get 9th place as well. Again, don't feel the need to throw your game if you've still got mats, and don't feel the need to go for a refresh unless you absolutely need it. Fine, let's go, boy. So after those first 3 games, I was on 60 points, doing really well. I was about top 300 on the leaderboards and performing pretty well. But as you can see, throughout game 4 to game 8, I had a load of series of games that were pretty awful. First one, I died at spawn. That's perfectly normal. It's just something that happens in a solo tournament. Is you're going to die at spawn once or twice. That's perfectly normal, and you guys can get over that. Just make sure you're ready to actually die at spawn to a better player, which I'm perfectly okay with. The next 2 games actually died end game because somebody on my house was using all the internet. That is something outside of your control. Getting shot through walls and stuff is obviously very unfortunate, but all you need to go ahead and do is just simply try to reset and not try to throw your tournament away. I know this happened to you guys in previous tournaments, or maybe even this one, where you have a bad game where you don't get any points. As you can see, 2 points for this 20-minute game is really unfortunate, really poor. But the thing is, you can't throw away your next game and let it affect you. Then in game 7 and game 8, died at spawn twice in a row in really short games. Those games I was kind of throwing away. I don't know what I was doing at that point, making some bad misplays on my drops and everything like that. But again, you need to go ahead and reset. So what I do whenever I need to reset is just simply get out my office, go outside and actually just take a breather, go say hello to my dogs, and then I come back in completely clear-minded, able to focus on the next game, and I was finally able to get some kills, as you guys will be pleased to know. So despite the fact that I've waited 5 games now pretty much, I've got very little points, and it is very easy to get frustrated and try to change up your game plan, maybe even try to key to get a good game and like a win or something. It is very important to stick to your game plan and what you know. If you're a good W keyer, stick to that. If you're a good end game player like I am, make sure you consistently stick to that and you don't change up your game plan at all mid-tournament. You can easily come back in these formats if you get a good end game performance like I did in this game. Right here, this guy just didn't connect too well, so I just kept on spraying him from underneath, trying to pressure him, trying to get his server focus. You can see I'm not just shooting his backcourt, I'm shooting underneath him to make it very obvious for other players that they should be trying to grief him with me, and it results in a free kill. And right here, I'm not actually getting too greedy for the loot. Again, I've got a pad, I've got really good mats, I don't want to overcommit and get that loot. If I can let this other player get the pad maybe, I can instead position on top of him later on and use his pad instead of my own. Realising that he's got the pad, he's probably going to use it as early as possible, and I can now save mine. But he didn't actually end up spotting the pads. I actually went ahead and built over it after he left it there for a while, got all the extra loot, and again, just played really safe and made sure I got all the extra mats from that. So again, sticking to that game plan, I know I just need to play really conservative and not going for anything I don't need unless it is completely free. I go ahead and look towards the front of my tarp, make sure I get fully towards front side of the zone here. Actually catch this guy off who didn't really expect it, wasn't blocking off his walls correctly. Nearly get a full box on him, so instead to come around from this side, spray through, again keeping a really safe distance from not getting straight into the box, get the wall place, cone slide, and then I'm able to commit in with the SMG. And as soon as I get that refresh, don't sit on the loop too long where other players are going to come over to me, instead just pad out from this box that I'm standing on. And on a high layer, bunny hopped forward so I can get a little bit of extra momentum, and then just go ahead and tarp straight forward. At this point it is again to have that game plan when you've got 2 pads or when you've got 1 pad, how you're going to use them, whether you're going to be trying to recycle or where you actually want to use them. Probably the worst thing you can do is to go have 2 pads, then panic to decide what you're going to do with them last second, because that's how you end up not using them, or that's how you end up wasting them and using them in bad spots that aren't really worthwhile. So this is where having a strategy during the end game for what you're going to do for your rotates is really important, rather than just winging it. You can see here, everybody on the end of first moving is clamped up on this west hand side. There's only pulled west from east, they're all on that west hand side. So I'm going to go ahead and use the anti-jam strategy, where you basically go on the dead side of second moving, so it's for all different moving zones, place the pad and hit the low pad, go the whole way through all that uncongestion where there's nobody at, and get really nicely towards front side in a good spot where I can just keep rotating very safely. It's a really useful strategy if you guys want to copy it. Just use the dead side, can work for low ground rotates, pepper rotates, or any type of movement rotates with bouncers, crash pads, or anything they add in the future as well, and jump pads of course. From here, this endgame is just pretty simple. I make sure that I utilise getting forward as much as possible, don't take any dumb fights trying to jump in somebody's box, and then just make sure that I'm not really rushing anything as well. take my time by tanking Storm on the backside, edit through, completely cover off all my different angles from all different directions, get my way to front side. I know at this point I basically do need a refresh. I can't really continue rotating with these low amount builds unless I carry on through other players' edits, so I'm actually quite fortunate that this other player behind me was on this wall, get a nice refresh just like that, and this is where I kind of made a mistake. I should have gone back to the area that I knew, that left hand side that was very empty and I already had the edit control. Instead I decided to jump down on the side that I didn't know, which is a big end game mistake, going somewhere you don't know and you haven't scouted, end up just running through here, having to jump through some of these boxes since I'm dying to Storm, and then dying to the other player. If I waited a little bit more seconds, despite the fact I've only got 4 ticks of Storm, I probably could have killed one of these other players since they ended up jumping each other, and if it was just a second later, as you can see, they would have been low HP and an easy them. Alright, let's get into the last game. This one was pretty clutch. So right here, I need to go ahead and get 15 points in this last game to qualify me. If I didn't qualify, it'd be pretty embarrassing, especially inside all this solo stuff, so I'll make sure to play the best of my gameplay here, basically rotating in on a high layer, getting above all these other players, and boxing up in a very safe position. So right here, this is the importance of creating a game plan for yourself for that specific end game and what loot you have. I know I've got a good amount of shield and I've got peppers as well to allow me to run really quickly, and I don't have a pad. I'm not able to recycle a pad as well on the start of first moving, so all I need to go ahead and do is just rotate with peppers. Easier said than done, so it's very important to, again, create that game plan, know exactly what you're doing. So for me, with rotating for peppers, I want to let other players rotate with their mats first of all, then I'm going to follow them up later on and just basically recycle their tarps and get above them most importantly. You can see I do that here. You can see I do that here. Instead of going for a kill or anything on my rotate, instead of going below these other players, instead get to a nice high layer in the end of zone, to chill and just wait a second. And again, as second moving pulls far, as you can see here, just able to rotate along, following the dead side of Storm to basically avoid these other players. It's pulling fast, I just want to get to the front side as quick as possible and not risk taking any engagements on the back side. It's a nice high layer again, just going up a nice layer, and then again, waiting here for as long as possible, possibly look for a kill on backside. However, my aim was absolutely awful in this case since my arm was hurting. So basically all I did was just play really consistent and patiently for that top 10 placement. Again, follow the dead side, go towards the edge of Storm, go up to a nice high layer, and make sure I'm above all these other players. Just important to sticking to that game plan, making sure you don't make any stupid mistakes during the end game. Deep breath. What I need to go ahead and do is just make sure I live for as long as possible here. Already got that top 10, not sure if I'm cold, so I basically just run back in Storm, wrap around for a second, tank some Storm even to guarantee them getting that 104 top 9 placement, come through the old build here, and then just play for as long as possible and preserve my life. Again, in these tense situations where you don't know what call is going to be, don't know if the predictions are 100% accurate, just make sure you play your life for as long as possible and don't risk anything. Tank a tick of Storm before I drop here, shot as late as possible, go down, and again, never committing to this Angel until I absolutely have to, and I've got the 106 points for that top 7. And there you go, just like that, I was done, qualified, very simple stuff, and again, I'm not really playing this game too much, as you guys know. I'm literally just doing reviews and doing videos and working with pro players and just doing some occasional creative on the side. I'm never playing solo customs, and I'm still able to qualify for an event like this just by being somewhat smart and having a good game plan that I can learn from.